I get to do this. I literally know what I'm called to do in this earth. Now, if you've listened to me before, I'm very adamant about a concept which says your purpose is not something you can find. Your purpose is something that finds you. And so as you become more mature, as you become more responsible, as you show yourself approved to handle certain aspects of life, then more of your purpose can be revealed. Now, it's my personal opinion that your purpose never changes. But the thing that most people are looking for is not the purpose. They're actually looking for another thing that is further down the list called the assignment. So the thing called your purpose is the why. The thing called your calling is the who. The thing called your gift is the what. And then you have some other things, core values, core vices. Then we need to get into the mission, the vision, and then the dream. We get into some of those things. And then finally, once we understand the baseline of who we are, why the core values and the core vices, because we need to acknowledge, if you will, the things that are in your bloodline that are positive, but also the things in your bloodline that are potentially negative. We call those generational curses. So we need to be very mindful of those things. But at the bottom of that list, and it's all important, please understand, comes a thing called the assignment. Your assignment is what most people are looking for. This is the thing. These are the boots of the ground decisions. But once you have this yearning, and I'm speaking to a very unique group of people, I call them pictures. These are the people who are pioneers, innovators, creators, trailblazers, underdogs, revolutionaries, extraordinaries, and strategists. You are the people who create things from the unseen world. You are visionaries. You see with your mind, and then you take those things, whether it be a business, a piece of art, a concept, an idea, and you bring them into the natural world where we can see with our eyes. What does that mean? That means that what you see with your eyes are actually confirmation of what you already see or saw in your mind. So that means that vision is actually greater than sight. Vision is what you see with your mind. Sight is what you see with your eyeballs. And sight can only confirm vision. So to the people who have these big dreams, big stuff. In fact, let me say it this way. I've been enamored here lately, enamored with speaking to a specific group of people around a specific set of circumstances. And those circumstances are a dream that is God-given, this mandate, this pressure that's pulling on you, a weight of the dreams plus the stress associated with cultivating that dream can be overwhelming. Can I do it? Am I the right person? All of your personal insecurities come out in this process. And of course, this overwhelming feeling, you can be so overwhelmed to the point where you actually consider quitting and walking away. So I've done a series of messages about this. You have something beating on the inside of your chest that is unrelenting. There is an energy fighting to be expressed. What you have done to this point was preparation, but there is something greater, something bigger and more beautiful than you've produced up to this point. Something more beautiful and something greater inside you. Along with the blessings of the compulsion come the burden of consistency. Ooh, how do I express this? Where do I express this? And for whom am I to express it? It is easy to evaluate your past failings through the vast responsibilities of this great call. I call this the tipping point, or better yet, you come to a thing called the tipping point. You have this great call, and you go, and I have a series of messages. One was called, oh goodness, I have them here, so let me just read to you what I have. By a means to an end was 488. Please check that out. 490 was finding your through lines. I also went on to talk about 492, which is you have believed a lie, or have you believed a lie? It's a question rather than a statement. And then 494 is the grace gap, which was yesterday. And I'm going to kind of recap some of those, but it's a series, and I'm looking at a trend. I'm pretty good at watching trends, seeing trends, and I see a consistency to the message. And it seems like I'm speaking to that very group of people, that same group of people, I call them pictures, who are experiencing a very unique, extraordinary people who are experiencing an extraordinary set of circumstances that are designed to get you to stop. The tipping point is when the struggle to become vanishes and you are now known for what you've been reaching for. The tipping point. That's what we're trying to get to. It is the point where you go from obscurity to renown. From a rookie to a veteran, from an amateur to a pro, from the student to the teacher, from the weird guy to the wisdom guy. I talked about a means to an end, 488. Make sure you check that out, especially while it's free and available. Do what you must. Quick summary. Do what you must so that you can do what you will. Do the hard thing now so that you can do the hard thing later. Do the hard thing now so that you can do the heart thing later. Do what's hard in your mind so that you can do what's connected to your heart later. Do the hard thing so that you can do the easy thing later. What you see right now, here were my 3 points or my 3 takeaways. What you are seeing right now does not compare to the glory that's unfolding for you by any means necessary. The price of admission is the blood, the sweat, and the tears. These are the costs. These are the costs that make what is hoped for and prayed for so special. Thank you for joining me. Sow the seeds and then you will reap the harvest. That was under by any means necessary, or by any means, actually, not by any means necessary, just by any means. 490, I talked about finding your through lines. Please check that one out too, because they all go together. I'm seeing a pattern here. A lesson that was taught using the acting career of Regina King, I know her as Brenda from 1985, as a microcosm about remaining diligent to what you have and what you do. Regina King has been acting since 1985 from a show called 227. I remember because I was watching it. Brenda! She is now considered to be a master of her craft, but that mastery was spawned from consistency. She stuck with the thing for a long time, and now she's known. When it comes to acting, her name and acting are synonymous. 3 points to take away from that. Consistency is a currency. You can take consistency to the bank. Being dedicated to something will take you further than talent alone. We choose where we spend our money. We choose who we dedicate ourselves to based on their consistency. Show me a trouble in a relationship and I'll show you a person who's inconsistent in a particular way. Point number 2 under that. Where you begin will not be where you end. When you are constantly in the pursuit of mastering your craft, where you start will not be where you end when you are in hot pursuit of mastering your craft. Point number 3, which is time, is what makes a thing the thing. We celebrate the talented for a season, but we celebrate the steady. We celebrate the steady, the constant, and the unvarying for a lifetime. So the spoils always go to the people who can do what they do at a high level, but do it for a long time. Anybody can be a one-trick pony. In message 492, the D.I.M.E. Devotional 492, I talked about, have you believed the lie? I asked a question. There is an idea that suggests that where you are as a product of the decisions that you've made. Although I believe that to be true, I've recently come to struggle with this concept because there are so many examples and challenges that are completely outside of one's control. When we take on the blame of a situation, hear this, that is our responsibility and not our fault. When we take on the blame of a situation, that is our responsibility, but not our fault. It is easy to internalize the issues with your identity, to confuse failure of the situation with the failure of the person. It's important that we be mindful that the situation is failing, not you as a failure. In fact, I got 3 points about that. For the record, this is what society is extremely good at doing, assigning blame based on the optics, based on how things look, not necessarily how things are. There always has to be someone to blame. Whether it be a layoff, a pandemic, cancer, who asks for cancer? Ethnicity, you were born a particular ethnicity. You didn't ask for it. No one got your permission. Your gender, you didn't choose that. Handicaps, you didn't choose that. 3 points, 3 takeaways. It is happening to you. It is happening to you. Have you believed the lie? It is happening to you, not to you, but for you. It's not happening to you, but for you. Point number 2. You were selected and not neglected. This was something that was lauded upon you because you are strong, not because you're weak. And point number 3, this is not a punishment for the weak, but a prize for the strong. Maybe you were going through this set of circumstances because you actually have stamina, tenacity, consistency. You were given this because you are strong, not because you're weak. 494, I talked about the grace gap. There is a moment, D.I.M.E Devotional episode number 494, the grace gap. There is a moment, an odd moment when you change who you are, but still have a reputation based on who you once were. There is a period of time where the heart, the mind, and the behaviors are different, very different. But the people that knew you from before limit you to who you have been, and they are justified in doing so because you hurt them. You hurt them, you offended them, you made them feel bad about themselves. You were a rough character at one point. You did what they say you did, and they are justified in believing. How do you get through that? How do you get from the point of you've changed who you are? You're now sowing the right seed, but you still have to deal with a reputation connected to these terrible harvests. Just know this, 3 things. You will know them by their fruit, not by their vegetables. Know this, it takes time. The fruit versus a vegetable. It's important that we consider a tree. Fruits come from trees, and trees take time. So the good seeds that you put into the ground, it doesn't say you will know them by the vegetable. It doesn't say you will know them by a season. It says you will know them by the fruit which comes from a tree, and trees take years. So it may be 3, 4, 5, 2 years of you doing the right thing consistently for people to take notice and start to see that the person who you used to be is gone. Trees take time. Sowing the right seed takes time. Don't quit. Keep moving. Number 2, the gap is where you grow. This is the gap. The gap between people believing in who you are and believe or trusting who you used to be. Or maybe I said that backward. Trusting who you now are, but also recognizing who you used to be. That's a gap. And that's the gap where you can be conditioned, yet maintain. When you can take the abuse, yet maintain who you said you are becoming. You maintain the new person, the new attitude, disposition, and behaviors. This is called conditioning. You are being conditioned. You're being set up. You are going through a process to become better. This is the buffering process. It's something about, this is the wax on, wax off. If you watch The Karate Kid, this is the conditioning. You go through a process. You got to become, this is the muscle memory. This is when you develop the stamina. This is when you develop the calluses necessary to handle the new life that you say that you want. Point number 3 under the grace gap is, the grace gap is more than the grace you receive. This is really important. But the grace you bestow. It's not just the grace that you're asking for, but it's also the grace that you in turn give to the people who you know you've hurt, who you've offended, who you've wronged. They are justified in believing and thinking the way they're thinking. Can you give them enough grace? Or are you going to be narcissistic and only think about yourself? Are you always the hero and the victim in your story? If you are always the hero and the victim in the stories you tell, you may be a narcissist and selfish. But the grace you bestow, the grace gap is more than the grace you receive, but the grace that you can bestow, the grace that you give. You and I must find a way to give the people we have hurt, abandoned, and forsaken, offended, that we hurt to the core, time to see us in a new light. We've got to give them a new light. But these are the components that are getting you to what I'm talking about tonight, which is the tipping point. These are the components that get you to the tipping point. 3 ways to enter into your tipping point. And what is it? Let me make sure I'm clear as to what the tipping point is. And I made mention of it before. The tipping point is the line, and it's a fine line. You don't even really see it. You go from an amateur to a pro. You go from the from the student to the teacher. You go from people being obscure and no one knowing who you are to all of a sudden you're well known. It is the point where you become the thing you've been working so hard to be, and now you can rest a little bit in the change of what you've been working for. Now people see you as the carpet cleaner. I used to have a carpet cleaning business, and I would answer the phone. Hello, this is Brian, the carpet cleaner. And over time, it became so ingrained, not just in myself, but everyone that called me knew me through the lenses and the prism of a carpet cleaning business. So 3 ways to get to that tipping point. 3 ways to get, what is the tipping point? The tipping point alludes to a scale. Consider a scale. And you're putting water or rocks, let's say pebbles. You have one of those scales, maybe like the blind woman of justice, and you see the scales. And each scale, there's a pulley in between, a lever in between. And whatever side is heavier is the side that actually comes down further. And so as you are putting, there's rocks on one side that say things like failure. This says things like adulterer. They say things like liar. They say things like inconsistent. They say he's a cheater. And those are the things you used to be at one time, or a novice, or a student. And those are the things, or the amateur, or whatever it is. And those are the things on one side of the scale. But as you keep putting another rock of consistency, a rock of love, a rock of patience, a rock of mastery, a rock of creativity, a rock of take your pick. A rock of mastering something, whether it be a rock of love, a rock of kindness, whatever the rock is. And as you put those rocks every single day on the side of that scale, eventually who you want to be begins to outweigh who you used to be. It's the tipping point. You become the person that you presented yourself to be, the thing that you've been trying to create. This thing, this bellowing, this thing that is pumping inside your chest. And you've been trying to do this thing and make this thing and have this thing and be this thing for all of these years. The tipping point is where you put enough rocks, enough consistency, enough energy, enough love, and enough mastery on that side of the scale to now the weight is shifted. That tipping point. How do you enter that tipping point? I'm glad you asked. 3 ideas and I'm done. Make sure you listen to those other messages because they all speak to it. Because to me, to get to the tipping point is the mastery. But in order to get to the tipping point, you have to go through the process. In order to get to the tipping point, you have to go through the point of not believing that you can do this thing. You have to go through a process of not believing in yourself. You have to go through the process of questioning your ability. You have to go through the process of confronting who you are. We're talking about doing the thing that you were called to do, doing the thing that you were put on this earth to do. We're talking about the unseen God. I say God, the unseen force I consider to be God. Now rewarding you, because this is a different moment if you haven't noticed. This is a different season. See, we had time before. I don't know if we have that time now. I'm not trying to be, melodramatic. But what I'm saying is that for some of us, for me in particular, if the average lifespan is 80 years, I'm 47. So that means that I am entering into the third. I'm 7 years into my third 20-year cycle, my third generation. I only get 4 generations to get something right. The average lifespan is 80 years. So for me anyway, as I enter into the third, I can't make the same mistakes that I made in quarters 1 and quarter 2. I'm in quarter 3 now. You gotta hear what I'm saying. And if you're old, if you're beyond 60, you ought to be looking at things from the perspective of legacy. I'm in my business years. I'm in my working. I'm in my earning years. So I've got to reach for something in a different way. But anyway, the 3 ways to enter into your tipping point season. Number 1 is the tipping point is a byproduct and not a direct product. You're chasing after being well known. No, don't chase after being well known. Chase after mastery, and the mastery creates the word of mouth, and the word of mouth creates you becoming renowned. People begin to know you because you've mastered your craft. The tipping point is a byproduct and not a direct product. So do what you do. The consistency of running the race is what makes you faster. It's not trying to be faster. Let me say that again. If you are a runner, I know it's a metaphor and we got metaphor on top of metaphor, bad speaker, but I think you get my point. If you're trying to run faster, the best way to run faster is to run consistently. Keep showing up to the track. Keep showing up to the track. Keep submitting to a coach. I definitely recommend getting a coach. Submit to the coach, submit to the track, submit to the time. That's how you get faster. And the byproduct of submitting to the coach, to the track, and the time you spend running, is what produces the lower or the fast, the speed, if you will. Submit to the coach, Submit to the track, submit to the time, the consistency of the time, the practice time. And that's what gives you the faster rate of running. Point number 2, the tipping the tipping cannot be controlled. Yes, it will happen when you are ready to receive. The tipping cannot be controlled. It will happen when you are ready to receive. Be thankful for the time that it takes. Be thankful for the time that it takes, because you don't want to come out too soon. You don't want to be ready too fast. I know you want to be ready. I know you want to be renowned right now. But the worst thing you can do is to be ready too soon, unprepared. And instead of you building a legacy, you can actually tear your legacy down before you really have a chance to build it. I can't stress that enough. There's a point in building a business, and I've built a few in my life, where if you're not careful, you can get something too fast. You can get popular too fast, so much so to the point where you don't have a system in place to address the needs of the people who are reaching out to you. And so now their experience with you is going to be a result of no emails being returned, no text messages being returned, and phone calls not being returned. They're going to recognize that even though you have the gift, you don't have a system. Even though you have the gift, you don't have the character. It's not your gift. Your gift makes room for you, but it's your character that keeps you there. If you don't have the right character, we're going to have a problem. So the tipping point cannot be controlled. It will happen when you are ready, and be thankful for the time that it takes. Number 3, thank you for standing. Thank you for listening, standing with me, listening to me, hearing me out. This is a good message. Maybe it's my humble opinion. Maybe I'm biased. But the tipping point is the trusting of the unseen forces. I've alluded to it before. But it's the train of the believing in the trusting of the unseen forces. Now, I refer to that force as God. Maybe you refer to it as karma, or inertia, or energy, or I don't know what you call it, the universe, I'm not sure, but I refer to that as God. But the tipping point is the trusting of the unseen. It's the trusting me. So the unseen forces, God is trusting me because I've done what I'm supposed to do. I did it not in front of people. I did what I was supposed to do behind the scenes. And so now the tipping point comes. What is the tipping point? It's the moment that I go from student to teacher, from amateur to pro, from being obscure to being renowned for the thing that I do. The reason why that happens is because I am being trusted by the unseen force. I call that God. God can trust me now because I handled the trouble. I handled the disrespect. I handled the offenses. I handled the traumas. I handled the disrespect. I handled the lack of resources. I handled the chaos and confusions. So I dealt with the internal. I love what Jacob said. I love what God said over Jacob. You have battled against man and God and won. Man and God and won. Those are the two things you're fighting. You're fighting against your future you. Can you let the future you win? And you're fighting against the past you. So you're always 3 entities fighting at one time. And this is my humble opinion about Jacob as he stood on the other side of this little brook, this little, what is it? It's called a ford, but it's a river called Jabbok. The Jabbok stands for emptying out. It means to empty oneself out. As he's on the other side of this thing by himself, he wrestles with God, the iconic wrestling with God. In my humble opinion, he was wrestling with 3 things. He was wrestling with his past, his present, and his future. And he allowed his future to win. And my belief is this: we can argue, or wrestle rather, maybe I should say wrestle. We can wrestle with this unseen force as long as we allow that unseen force to win. And I believe that unseen force is God. I always say this, and I don't mean it to take away, but I truly hope this has been helpful to you. I truly hope this has made sense for you. I always present it to the best of my abilities in this moment, but I'm getting better every day. I'm putting a rock on that scale every single day, and my tipping point is coming. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Brian Keith. Love you.